On X, everybody. We're going to listen to part of it. Let's play that from the control booth.
We've prayed and deliberated on the way forward. If there was anything I could do to produce a favorable outcome, more campaign stops, more interviews, I would do it. But I can't ask our supporters to volunteer their time and donate their resources if we don't have a clear path to victory. Accordingly, I am today suspending my campaign.
Okay, there you have it. It is definitely official. So, Allie, there have been folks who have suggested, Allie, that he will keep an eye on 2028. Oh, I understand Allie's just run away. Okay, yeah. She's obviously there trying to get more from Nikki Haley.
I'm here.
There you are. Okay, you're there. Okay, so my question is, now that you have him out and Nikki Haley in, right, just the two of them, what do you think the chances are that Donald Trump is looking at this like, I could potentially unify my Republican Party if I picked her to be my VP. I know she has said countless times, I am not playing for second. But is this something that you have heard any sort of whisper campaign from her colleagues there, from those that you know are associated with the campaign, that she might consider in this particular circumstance?
So I'm going to tell you just from watching her and then what we've actually heard her said. We heard her say just 2 days ago to a group of diners in New Hampshire that she's not going to be vice president, that that's off the table. Fine. From watching her, I also think that this is a woman who has never been running for vice president. The way that she has run has been strategic. They have had a plan from the very outset of it. And the people who are really talking about Haley on the VP list, the people who are really stoking that fire have been the Vivek Ramaswamy campaign, the Ron DeSantis campaign, and many of her rivals. I do think that there is something that is slightly gendered about that. We look at the fact that it's usually women and women of color who voters tend to look at and say, well, maybe not yet. But at the same time, too, she is someone who has such a high degree, a high political resume, so much experience on the foreign policy front, and she could bring in more voters. It would be someone who could unify the party for Trump. But at the same time, I don't think that that's why she ran this race.
Yeah. Okay. You stand by, my friend. Dasha, we're going to go back to you with the DeSantis campaign. Give me anything more you're hearing officially from the folks there. What's the word? How much level of disappointment is there, or was this expected over these last couple of days? There was some handwriting on the wall.
Yeah, I can tell you that the event that was supposed to happen today here in Manchester, New Hampshire, at 5 o'clock has been canceled. DeSantis is actually not in this state right now. He is back home in Florida. So any additional announcements that we might hear from him tonight, any official word, any speaking to the press, anything on camera that we might see from him later will come from his home in Florida. I'm confirming that that's in Tallahassee, but I believe he's in the capital in Tallahassee. That is where his family flew off to after Iowa. I am getting word from one of my sources that the decision was made this afternoon. Clearly, deliberations were happening up until the last minute. I mean, I know from watching from the outside, we were watching these moves being made. He pulled out of Meet the Press and CNN appearances this morning. We were wondering, we don't have reporting as to why, but it's certainly led to some speculation. The move to leave South Carolina and add these New Hampshire events, none of which are happening now, by the way, also raised a lot of eyebrows and a lot of questions. There was a feeling of uneasiness and a feeling of a little bit of a depletion, right? The air seemed to have come out of this campaign over the last few days. And I'll tell you, my last interview with him coming right off of Iowa and South Carolina, one of the anecdotes that he shared with me as he was trying to, celebrate a second place finish there, he said that a voter came up to him and said, you know what, I'm going to vote for Trump this time, but I'm going to vote for you next time. And in hindsight, looking back at that conversation, I wonder if that wasn't him starting to lay the groundwork to potentially look towards his future, in 2028 or beyond, kind of knowing that the writing was on the wall. But this is someone who is a fighter. Knowing him over the course of this campaign, I can bet you that he did not want to let go of this race until he absolutely had to. So we're going to be digging in on the reporting to know, to try to find out what exactly led to this decision, led to this decision coming right now at this moment. But certainly a surprising end, given all of the twists and turns over the last several hours, Alex. Despite, again, not a surprise that this happened, but how and when and where did take some of us by surprise.
Yeah. Dasha, I'm going to ask you to stand by as well as we bring in Susan Del Percio, of course, GOP strategist, Msnbc political analyst. Susan, you were on this broadcast less than 2 hours ago. You go, crystal ball girl. You said this was going to happen. You said that he had more reason to drop out now before even a vote could be cast in New Hampshire so that he wouldn't have too much of a loser identification if he has any hope of going for the 2028 presidential election and run a campaign then. So you were right. All the handwriting on the wall. You were right.
Well, we know that Ron DeSantis is nothing but, if not nothing but ambitious, and that he does have a long runway ahead of him if he wants to try this again. I also hear that his donors had completely dried up on him. That was one thing that was really holding the campaign back. And, you know, I know that Tim Scott's endorsement of Donald Trump, the senator from South Carolina, was a big deal. But the other thing that happened in that same day is that Donald Trump brought up a bunch of South Carolinian legislators, including the lieutenant governor. And I think that also showed that there was just no way DeSantis could make any move in South Carolina. So a little bit of self-preservation on his part. It's the smart political move. It is interesting that he chose not to go to New Hampshire and endorse Donald Trump, but I think that, you know, these are very hard decisions to make for a candidate. To drop out is a very big deal. This has been a toll on him and his family. They've been going through it. And I do think they made the right decision.
Yeah. So let me ask you what I was talking about with both Ali and Dashan as well. And that is, given the split in the Republican Party, though certainly overwhelmingly in favor of Donald Trump right now, would it be a wise move for Donald Trump to try to bring in Nikki Haley, have some conversations as his vice presidential candidate? Only because with only 2 candidates left, you'd think that would unify the party. Now, again, she has said multiple times, I'm not playing for second. We even heard Donald Trump say yesterday, musing, I don't think I would put Nikki Haley in the VP candidacy position. But he didn't shut the door on it. Just given the fact you've seen what's coming, would it be smart of Donald Trump to pick her?
Well, I guess I never look to Donald Trump and say, will he make the smart decision? What I do is, what is the decision that best fits his ego? And Nikki Haley doesn't match that. Nikki Haley is too strong, too independent, too able to think for herself, and willing to give her own opinion. Even when she was in the Trump administration, she went a little bit against Donald Trump from time to time. So I don't see him wanting to have someone of Nikki Haley's strength on the ticket with him. He'd much rather have someone that is unknown, kind of like how Mike Pence was, someone who's known within the conservative background, but isn't known to the general public, and who can kind of make him look good. So I'll go back to my prediction of Alabama's Katie Britt.
Yeah, that is an interesting one you brought up earlier as well. At least Stefanik's name has been bantered out a heck of a lot lately, given her performances on the campaign trail and endorsing and encouraging voters to vote for Donald Trump. Please stay where you are, my friend. Susan, stay right there. We're going to go right now to Vaughn Hilliard, everybody. He has been following the Trump campaign. Vaughn, let's get to any reaction thus far from the Trump campaign to having Ron DeSantis drop out.
So far, no word from Donald Trump himself, and his senior advisor, Jason Miller, just stepped out of campaign headquarters in Manchester and told our embed, Jake Traylor, that he will let Donald Trump be the first to respond and comment on Ron DeSantis dropping out. these are part of conversations where I had asked a senior advisor just about 24 hours ago about whether they would, give a gentle off-ramp to Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley to drop out, and instead of, all but dropping the bomb on their campaigns, allowing those two to, be brought back into the fold. And the senior advisor told me, we'll let the chips fall where they may. Donald Trump, I am told, had been furious with Ron DeSantis, particularly over the loyalty and the fact that he felt like he had propelled Ron DeSantis to the Florida governorship in the first place in political national relevance, and that he had believed that Ron DeSantis should have dropped out long ago and, of course, not challenged him at all. But that's not what reality is, and we are here in July of 2024 and Ron DeSantis dropping out and endorsing him. And I think that is the question mark. Does Donald Trump try to, welcome him back in? Last night on this stage, he was explicit in saying that, he doesn't even talk about Ron DeSanctimonious, is the name he gave him, anymore, because he didn't find him relevant. And so the question is, does Donald Trump feel like it's worth his while? Because on the other hand, he did say on the campaign stage as well last night that it was time for the Republican Party to come together. And so these are the realities that we have frankly watched before, Alex, play out. 8 years ago, we watched the Republican Party rally around Donald Trump, and we're watching that now. But to what extent does Donald Trump feel like he owes that loyalty or that, bear hug in return to these folks? Or can he go forward, as Donald Trump's party without these folks that he feels like betrayed him in the past? That's what we're going to be looking at in the days ahead now.
NBC's Alia Vitale. And then there were two with this breaking news. What will this mean for the Nikki Haley campaign? I know that you're at the event in Seabrook, New Hampshire. What's the reaction? Boy, there are a lot of cameras behind you, by the way. She must be talking about this.
A lot of cameras behind us, but no, this is just the basic coverage for the event because the event is kicking off right now. You're watching a lot of our embeds move their cameras closer to the candidate so that they can maybe try to ask the question that I think all of us are waiting to ask, which is what is your reaction to the fact that Ron DeSantis will be leaving this race? For Nikki Haley, this is something that gives her what she's been asking for. The Haley campaign has been saying that they want it to be a one-on-one race between Haley and Trump. Well, now they've got it officially on paper. Now, DeSantis throwing his support behind Trump. I imagine we're going to hear something from Haley that sounds pretty similar to what we heard when Senator Tim Scott of her home state of South Carolina endorsed Trump just a few days ago. Haley will regularly refer to the other rivals in the field as the fellas, of course, referencing the fact that she's the only woman running in this Republican primary. It's a sort of shot at the so-called boys club that she at times has felt is keeping her out of the top echelons of politics. But frankly, the more clear answer to why these candidates might be falling in line right now is that coming home to MAGA is both the smart politics move in the short term, as it seems Trump is wrapping up this primary himself, but then also for a lot of these candidates, they're all very young. Tim Scott, Ron DeSantis, even someone like Nikki Haley, they have long political runways ahead of them, and it could be a moment for Ron DeSantis, who Dasha is right, has said he's not someone who just comes and kisses the ring. There's a reason for him to do that. As I've been talking to my sources on the ground in Florida and in other places, they've referenced the fact that DeSantis may not have done his last presidential run here in 2024, and that this could be a face-saving move as he tries to move forward into whatever the next chapter of his political career is. As for right now, though, we're seeing Nikki Haley continue with this rally, frankly, as usual, not hearing anything out of the corner of my ear right now that sounds like she's reacting to Ron DeSantis. But one of the other things I think, and if you want to listen in, we can.
In this race, there were a lot of fellas. All the fellas are out, except for this one. And this comes down to, what do you want? Do you want more of the same, or do you want something new? Do you want to go back to a country where they decide who's a good person, who's a bad person, who's the right person, who's the wrong person? Or do you want to come together as Americans and say, you know what? We're going to get inflation down and get our economy back on track. We're going to get our kids reading again and go back to the basics in education. We're going to secure our border once and for all. We're going to bring law and order back to this country, and we are going to have a strong America that we can all be proud of. Yes. That's our goal. That's what we're doing. We've got 2 days until New Hampshire Hampshire goes to the polls. And we're going to make sure that we fight all the way until the last second. And what the people of New Hampshire should know is when we win the presidency in this country, I will do everything I can to prove to you that you made the right decision. But for now, I'll leave you with this. May the best woman win.
Okay, Allie, you had the phrase that she has coined, all the fellows are out, except for this one. Back to her all the fellas line that she's been giving throughout her campaign. Give me a sense, though, if it is down to just these two, where do you think the DeSantis voters go? Are they definitely going to Team Trump? And I ask this specifically about New Hampshire, where you are, because it is a notoriously independent state. And with just two to choose from, is there a chance this bolsters her at least in the Granite State?
Look, this is a tough state because of the independent streak, but then also a tough state because of the polling. When you have this many independents who may or may not play in a Republican primary, it makes it hard to forecast who could be coming out. Yes, the trend lines show that former President Donald Trump is leading the pack overall, and especially among registered Republicans. For Haley, what makes it such fertile ground is the way that more independent voters can actually play here, because they may not be as wedded to the MAGA faithful ideology as some Trump voters that we often talk to. But because this DeSantis news had really been percolating and we had all been reporting on it for most of the afternoon, I was able to ask some of my Haley World sources if they thought that there was a clear shift based on DeSantis dropping out here. Would that immediately benefit Trump? Would it benefit them? I think the smart money might say, and I know that we were talking about this earlier, that the DeSantis vote, however small the percentage here, goes immediately to Trump. I don't actually think that's true, mostly because, A, if you look in Iowa, the Haley folks feel like they didn't see an immediate shift in terms of who was choosing Haley second among DeSantis voters. They didn't see that go overwhelmingly to Trump. They feel like it's about a 50-50 split. Maybe so, especially because anecdotally on the ground here, voters who I've met who are coming to Haley events and maybe aren't decided have said, well, I just want to make sure I'm voting for someone that's not Trump. And the not Trump part is what could earn her some of those DeSantis voters in the end here.
We have this breaking news and the huge revelation that sources